on one side, numbers on the other side. On the other side, right? Numbers on the other side. That is why we're moving this +3 to the other side. And the second rule I taught you last term was when you move something to the other side, you do the opposite. You do the opposite. So that's why, for example, when we did -3 here, we also have to do -3 here, right? The reason this +3 becomes -3 on the other side is because we're canceling this out by doing -3 +3, and then we bring it over to here as well, right? If that is too confusing for you, then all I need you to remember at this stage is that we have to move this +3 to the other side, and when I moved it to the other side, it became -3. Got it? Can I get a thumbs up on your cameras if you get it? Awesome. Thanks, guys. So, all right. So from there, we can solve like this is now the same as 2s is equal to 25 minus 3. Sorry, 25 minus 3 is 22. 22. And then I'm going to rewrite 2s properly. 2s. Okay. Now, I want to get rid of this number as well, the 2 there. And 2s is the same as 2 multiplied by s. So the question is, if you don't want to do it mathematically, you can just do it in your head. The way to think about it is, what number multiplied by 2 will give you 22? So what number, 2 of what number gives you 22? You guys all know that is 11. Or if you want to do it in using maths, you will say that s is 22 divided by 2, and then s is equal to 11. So we know that Sanadi's age is 11, and the question said that Ravi is Sanadi plus 3, and since we know that Sanadi is 11, we do plus 3, and Ravi is 14. So the answer is 14. All right. So if you haven't taken this down already, I'll recommend you taking this down now because I need to move it to do the next question. So I'll leave it up for another 2 minutes before we move. All right. Let's go on to the next question. Question number 2. So let me change this. Resize. Move that to the other side. Okay. So question number 2 is the exact same thing. It says PK and Melvin are sharing a sum of money. PK receives $20 more than twice the amount that Melvin receives. If they received a total of $140, how much does PK receive? So let's write it down as we see. So PK receives $20 more than twice the amount Melvin receives. So P gets $20 plus twice the amount that Melvin receives. So P is equal to 20 plus 2 times M. Fairly straightforward, right? Next, let's see. All right. Next, it says that if they received a total of $140, how much did PK receive? So PK got, sorry, we know that PK plus Melvin got $140. All right. So now to solve this question, I'm going to replace this P just like we did before. I'm going to replace PK's amount with what we said PK gets, which is 20 plus M, sorry, times 2M. So this is 20 plus 2 times M, and then Melvin stays the same, plus M, and then 140 stays the same, plus 140. So now we have 2M plus M. So if you have two of something and you have another one of them, it becomes 3M. So 20 plus 3M is equal to 140. Up next, let's solve it again. 20 plus 3M is equal to 140. Move the 20 to the other side. So it becomes 3M is equal to 140 minus 20. 3M is equal to 120. Now we have to move 3 to the other side. So M is equal to 120 divided by 3. M is equal to 40. And we know that PK gets 20 plus 2 times M. PK gets 20 plus 2 times 40, which is $100. Do you guys understand?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I'll leave both of these
Yes,
up.
Melvin.
Want to take
Yes,
screenshots.
Melvin.
Yes, Melvin.
I will move on to
Yeah.
the question. So if you guys want, I'll leave it up there for a minute to go to the next question.
Melvin,
Yes,
isn't PK one of the teachers for Loyola?
all of these are teachers for Loyola.
Oh, okay.
Melvin.
Yes.
How do we say the question that we don't understand in the chat?
How do we say sorry?
How do we say the question that we don't understand in the chat? Where's the chat?
So there should be a chat function at the bottom, and then you can send messages there.
Oh.
All right. So moving on to question number 3, we have speed, distance, and time. So just to recap, we have this triangle to remember how speed, distance, and time work. So it's distance over speed and time. And a way to think about it, the acronym to remember it is, let's see, precision eraser. So the way to think about it is so if you forget it, the order is don't stop thinking. Recently, one of the students taught me another way to think about it. It was don't skibbity toilet. I'm not fully sure what that is, but if that helps you remember it, you can use that. But I like to think don't stop thinking. So that way you know that D is at the top, distance at the top, then you have speed, and then you have time. So if you want to find the distance of something, you know that distance is, and the way you figure it out is, do you see how speed and time are next to each other? So distance is speed multiplied by time. They're on the same level. If you want to find out what speed is, you can see the distance is on the top, time is at the bottom, so distance divided by time. And if you want to find out time, you can see that distance is at the top and speed is at the bottom, so it's distance divided by time. So that's how you find the distance of something, the speed of something, and the time of something, right? So for this question, You have Ardra and Dushan decide to have a friendly race. Ardra runs at a speed of 8 meters per second, while Dushan runs at a speed of 6 meters per second. If they both run for 20 seconds, how far apart will they be? So you can do the long way of it, which is by saying that, well, Ardra's speed is 8, her time is 20 seconds, so her distance in total is 160 meters. Dushan runs at a speed of 6 for 20 seconds, and his distance will be 120. And the difference of that will be 40 meters. Another way to think about it is every second, every second, Ardra is 2 meters ahead of Dushan. So that means every second she has a 2 meter advantage. 2 meters every second. So that means if she runs for 20 seconds, it'll be 40 meters. Right? Fairly easy. Question 4 is fairly easy as well. Andy's train travels a distance of 240 kilometers at a constant speed. So you have 240 divided by 3 hours, and that gives you 80 kilometers per hour. Pretty easy. Did I say that speed is distance divided by time? Yep. As you can see, distance is at the top, uh, time is at the bottom, so distance divided by time. There you go. All right. Okay. So let's get started. Let's give question number 5 a shot now. So let's see. All right. So question number 5. Namek visits a casino and bets his entire life savings on a bet. He has to get 4 on a dice and pick red card from a deck of cards. What is the probability of rolling a 4 on the dice and drawing a red card? So let's take a look. So the first thing I want to teach you guys, again, to keep this in mind all the time, is that in probability, whenever you see the word and, when you have to have two things happen at the same time, and is always multiplication. If you have the word or, it means add. And the way to think about it is, so I always use a funny sort of example to think about it. So imagine your mom and dad promise you to that they will buy you guys, let's say they promise to take you guys on a vacation to Japan, and you guys get $2,000 to buy whatever you want in Japan. So if you want to buy a PS5, if you want to buy you know lots of like Kit Kat chocolates or whatever you want, they'll buy whatever you want for $2,000, right? Now imagine they make this awesome promise to you, but they're evil mathematicians and they decide to give you a bet. So they say, let's see, um, uh, they tell Navya or Nerva, right? They tell Navya and Nerva, you have two options. Option A, option A is that you have to pass the gate exam and Melvin has to shave his hair, right? So he'll look like an egg. Option B, you pass the gate exam or Melvin has to shave his hair, right? So Navya Nerva, which option sounds better? Option A or B?
B.
B? What about you, Alamdar? Which option sounds better to you?
B.
Why does B sound better for you?
Because it's easier to pass the gate exam.
Well, the in B, Well, that's exactly right. It's easier to pass a gate exam. But the other benefit is, imagine you don't pass the gate exam, right? What can you do then, Alamdar? Do you think you can sneak into my house sometime and then shave my hair off while I'm sleeping?
No.
Come on, it's a joke. You can technically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so, so it's easier because you only need one or the other. Option A is hard because you need two of them to happen at the same time. Do you guys understand?
Yes.
So that's why in probability, when you see the word or, you add because when you're adding, you're increasing the probability. And strangely, when you multiply with probability, you actually decrease it. And I'll show you why. If you have 1/4 multiplied by 1/4, it becomes 1/8. And if you know your fractions, 1/4 is 0.25 and 1/8 is 0.125. So this is much bigger. Oh, oops, my math is so wrong, by the way. Hopefully you guys didn't notice that. That's pretty embarrassing. It's 1/16.
I
Oops.
noticed it.
0.25. And 1/16th, let me just double check what that is as a fraction. 1 divided by 6, sorry, decimal. It's 0.0625. As you can see, 0.25 is much bigger than 0.25. So you can see how the fraction actually became lower. But on the other hand, if it was an addition, this becomes 2 over 4, which is 0.5, which is much bigger than 1/4. Do you guys understand? So in probability, adding makes it bigger or makes it bigger. So let's take a look. So in this question, he needs to get a red card. Now, what's the probability of getting a red card? A probability of getting a red card is 1/2 because there is 26 red cards out of 52 cards in total. And then, so multiply. And the probability of getting a 4 is 1 over 6, and that is 1 over 12. So the answer is A. Question number 6. Alia had a rectangular chocolate bar. She ate 3/4 of the bar and divided the remaining pieces equally amongst herself and her two friends, Nisani and Ravi. Each person received 1/3 of the remaining piece. What fraction of the original chocolate bar does each person receive? So if Alia ate 3/4, what's left over, guys? 1/4. Good job. So 1/4 is left over. And if she shares it with 3 of her friends, we need to find out 1/3 of what's left over. So 1/4 multiplied by 1/3 gives me 1 over 12. All good?
Yep.
The main things I want to recap in fractions, just to refresh your memory. In fractions, let's just say you have 1/4 plus 1/3. Actually, what I'll do is I'll actually rearrange this just to make it easier for you guys to follow. 1/3 divided by 1/4. All right. In fractions, if you have 1 over 3 plus 1 over 4, you can't just do 2 over 7. In fractions, when you have additions, the base must be the same. And the lowest common denominator, lowest common multiple for 3 and 4 is 12. So 1/3 becomes 4/12, and 1/4 becomes 3/12, and now we can add them and they become 7/12. So that's just a quick recap. The same thing happens when you do subtraction. 1/3 minus 1/4 is equal to 4/12 minus 3/12, and you get 1/12. Right? So addition and subtraction of fractions, the denominator must be the same. So you have to convert both of them into the same denominator, as you can see here. Right? In fractions, when you do multiplication, nothing matters. You can just go across. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 4 is 12. Really, really easy. So multiplication of fractions is the easiest thing ever. The harder thing then is division. So 1/3 divided by 1/4. You can do the same thing as multiplication where you can ignore the denominator. But what you do is you do this thing called KFC. So you keep the first fraction. So I keep 1/3. I flip the division into multiplication, and then I change the quarter into 4/1. And now I have multiplication, which I can do. So 4 multiplied by 1 is 4. 3 multiplied by 1 is 3. Right? Just a quick recap of how fractions work. If you want to do more of this and you're a bit unsure, highly, 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 highly recommend you guys to go to this website, Khan Academy. And if you go there, just search up, whichever one you want to practice. So if you want to do addition, add, you can search up add fractions, sub fractions, multiply fractions, divide fractions, right? Make sure to get your practice done there. Really, really good stuff there. All right, what does F stands for? It stands for flip. So keep the first part, flip the middle, and then change the last one. By the way, the actual acronym is KCF because it makes more sense to change this and then because we're actually flipping it, it's called KCF. But to remember, I just like to say KFC because it's so much easier to remember than KCF, right? All right. Question number 7. Now, this was a fairly difficult question. I don't think I should have put it in as a recap question, but I did. So we will go through it. So let's go through it. Roshni is building a thruster for her rocket. The perimeter of the base is 31.4 meters. Find the volume of the thruster if it is 10 meters tall. So let's see. Few things to remember. In a circle, the perimeter of a circle is the same as the circumference, which is pi times 2 times r. Pi multiplied by 2 multiplied by r. And in this question, it says that the perimeter was 31.4 meters is equal to pi multiplied by 2 multiplied by r. And pi, I'll just write it here, pi is equal to 3.14. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide pi from both sides. So this will become 31.4 divided by 3.14 is equal to 2 multiplied by r. Now 31.4 divided by 3.14 is equal to 10, which is 2 multiplied by r. And if I move the 2 across, it becomes 10 divided by 2 is equal to r. Radius is equal to 5. So far, so good. We know that the radius of this rocket ship, so this rocket ship here, the radius is 5. Now we need to now we need to now we need to find the volume. The way you find the volume of any prism, so this is a prism, is you find the area of the base and then you multiply by the height, right? So the base is we need to find the area of the base. So the radius was 5. So remember, area of circle is pi multiplied by r squared. So we know that it is 3.14 multiplied by 5 squared, which is 3.14 multiplied by 25, right? That is the area of the base, right? That's the area of the base. Now to find volume, you multiply by the height, which is 10. So to find volume, you move this here, 3.14 multiplied by 25, and you multiply by the height. And that is, I would say, approximately, looks like 785 meters. Let me just double check. 3.14 times 25 times 10. Yep, 385 meters. So there's a lot of steps. The two main things you should remember or learn from this is that the circumference of a circle is pi times 2 times r. The second thing you need to remember is that pi is 3.14. The third thing you need to remember is that a prism, any shape where you can cut across and you get a 2D shape like that, you find the area of the base and you multiply by the height. So the third thing you need to remember is that. And the fourth, yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a fourth thing was the area of a circle. So those are the main things you remember. Now, if you're new or if you're not fully sure, again, go back to Khan Academy and then do your recap here. So this is where I want you to, build up your foundations. Just because we have so much more to learn, we won't have time to go through like, everyone build it up again for you guys individually. You will need to do that extra homework yourself. All right. So I'll leave this up here for about 3 minutes so you can take down the set of notes and then we'll do question number 8. Someone asked me, is Khan Academy free? Yes, Khan Academy is a free website.
Wait, Melvin,
Yep.
is Khan Academy for only maths or other things?
Oh, you can learn like English there as well. You can
Oh,
learn science. I think you can learn coding there. You can learn like Has. You can learn so many stuff there. It's pretty awesome. Like when I
okay.
was growing up, I used it a lot.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to move this around now. Let's see, resize.
Melvin,
Yep. Yes, sir.
when you divided 31.4 by 3.14, how did you get 2 times r?
Because it was already there. So if you take a look here, do you see that the 2 times r was already there?
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so the 2 times r was there, so that just stayed. What happened was the pi, we know that pi is 3.14, right? So instead of writing pi again, I just write it as 2.14. So I divide this left side by pi, cancel these two out, and I had to divide the same with the left-hand side. And that's why this is divided by 3.14, and this stayed the same.
Melvin,
Yep.
is Khan Academy online tutoring?
Yes, I would say so. It's more like an online resource where it like they have videos and then you self-learn. Imagine like Khan Academy like a really, really good textbook.
Does it do the gate preparation?
It does not do the gate preparation, unfortunately.
Amazing.
Guys, so I'll take all the other questions later. If you have anything, send it in the chat. If it's very interesting, I'll answer it straight away. Otherwise, I'll try to leave it to the end. So let's go to the next question, which is question ratios. So the main thing I want you guys to remember about ratios is that ratios is how you share things, right? So let me rewrite it next to here. Ratios is how you share something. How you share things. Share. So here we have, in a bag of marbles, the ratio of red marbles to blue marbles is 2 to 5. So another way to think about it is, if a factory is making marbles, for every 2 marbles they paint red, they paint 5 marbles blue. And you need at least 7 marbles to do this set properly, right? So you need at least 7 marbles to do it properly. So you have 2 and you have 5. And the question says we have 35 marbles. How many blue marbles are there? So you go from 7 to 35 by multiplying by 5. So you do the same thing to the left-hand side. So 2 times 5 is 10. 5 times 5 is 25. So there are 25 blue marbles. All right. So what we'll do now is I'll zoom out if you guys want to take a screenshot, if you want to take any notes, and then I'll go on to the next set of things we need to go through. All right. So I'll give you guys another 2 minutes. All right. So here we have, we're going to recap 3 main things that you need to learn for writing. The first thing I want to teach you guys has to do with creativity. Creativity, right? So in GATE, right, especially for writing, the number one thing I want you guys to get, into your head, the number one things I want you guys to understand is that GATE writing is not like any other English writing test that you've done in your life. It's very, very different. GATE writing is all about just creativity. Sure, it's important that you have good spelling. It's important that you have good structure, your punctuation, grammar, things like that. But what's more important is the creativity of your idea, right? So, how do you become creative? What does creativity mean? So, if I were to ask you guys, what is the best shape for a wheel? If I were to ask you to draw a car, most of you will draw this. Something like this, right? This is like the most common car that every kid draws, right? Now, the most common wheel shape is a circle, right? But on the other hand, if I were to ask you to think of a more interesting wheel shape, you might think of a square wheel, something like this. Square wheels. This is definitely very creative, very, very creative, but it is not a good wheel design. Because what happens? You'll keep bumping up and down as you try to drive your square wheel, right? What makes something very creative or very good is that it's both unique and better. right? It's both unique and better. So for example, many people, like if you guys watch YouTube, or even if you watch Facebook or even the news, there's always new news articles saying that, oh, uh, this scientist discovers how to make houses with plastic, or this person discovers how to make clothes with plastic or recycled plastic, things like that. But in reality, those are very unique, but they're not better. Because if it is better, we would all be using it. Another like sad reality or sad example is that many of us, know that, oh, look, um, like solar panels are awesome, right? Solar panels are awesome, right? And I love solar panels as well. They're very affordable, like compared to other things, by the way. Like obviously not individual solar panels are very expensive to most people, but solar panels have been getting very cheaper. They produce free electricity. We don't have to do anything once you set them up. And they have no, emissions. But what happens if it's a cloudy day or a rainy day like today? You won't be able to make electricity, right? That's why we as a country, or pretty much around the world, we as a species, we haven't you we are not using solar panels as our only fuel source, right? Something that is creative has to be both unique and better, right? So an example of that is phones used to have keyboards when I was younger. And then Apple decides to make a phone that is just a big touchscreen. This was unique and it was better. And now all phones you guys look around have touchscreens, right? Barely any phones have buttons. Another example to think about is Samsung, about a few years ago, released a phone called the Fold. Do you guys know the Fold? It's a phone that you can fold, into half. This was very unique, but is it better?
It
That's a
wasn't better, like the
Yeah,
screen.
it was. So you can fit it in your
Wasn't.
pocket easily.
Yeah.
When you
It was.
open
It it kind of was.
Yeah.
oh. So the reason I'm saying that is it really better with the question mark is because if it was better, all phones nowadays should be foldable, right? But only very, very few people in the world have bendable phones, right? Very, very few people have it, instead of everyone adopting it. So, for example, when we went from, buttons to touchscreen, all phones now are touchscreens. But when we went from, normal screens to bendable, we didn't go to like every phone is bendable, right? So what I'm trying to get at is you have to be unique and better. So from here, the question is, how do I become creative? So I don't think that so many people are, I would say most people are just born creative. You can teach a little bit on how to think a bit more creative, but it's not something that you can really, it's not like a skill that you can really, really teach. But there's ways to help you think outside the box. And the first one, especially by the way, especially in related to your creative structure thing, it is, sorry, excuse me. Excuse me. So the first rule is don't write about the literal topic. Don't write about the literal topic. So when you do your GATE exam, there will be 6,000 students. All of you will have the exact same topic, right? All of you have the exact same topic. Just like, and I'll show you what I mean by that in another example. When I was in year 8, right? My HAS teacher decided to have a challenge for all of us. And the challenge that my HAS teacher had was she said, I will give a lolly to a student who can, make a piece of paper to fly the furthest. in class. So we all spent 30 minutes, all of us, we all got a piece of paper from our teacher. We spent the next 30 minutes, all of us, Googling the fastest plane, the best paper airplane. And we made, these wonderful paper airplanes. And we all threw up, sorry, not threw up, we threw our paper airplanes, right? So another way, yeah, there you go. So we all threw paper airplanes. But when you threw our paper airplanes, it went, sideways, up and down, left, right, and it didn't go that well, that far. But one student, instead of making a paper airplane, what they did was they scrunched up the piece of paper into a ball and they threw it really, really far, and they clearly won. As you can see, when hundreds of people are given the same topic, right, which is like, for example, my class was this, everyone has the same way of solving it. The way to win is to think different, right? So why we have this rule about not writing about the literal topic is so you guys can stand out. If everyone in your cohort all write about the topic, so if the topic was, let's just say a light bulb, oops, a light bulb, how do I draw a light bulb? Right? And everyone just simply writes about a light bulb that they invented, or their dad was a light bulb inventor, or he found an old light bulb in their house, or there's a magical light bulb that transports through time. You're not going to do really, really well. You have to ask yourself, how can I stand out? How can I be unique? So don't make your whole story about an actual light bulb. Right, Caden? We can see you messing around, bro. So don't write about an actual light bulb. You got to ask yourself, how can I incorporate a light bulb in a way that's unique? So for example, one of the best stories I've read was a student talked about a light bulb helping, a country or a village succeed. So this girl, she wrote a story about a little village where they didn't have any electricity. So all the kids could not study at night. The moms and dads couldn't do any work once it got dark. And they had very bad health because they had fires instead of electricity, right? They had fires inside the house. So one day, excuse me, the village got light bulbs in their villages, and suddenly the kids can study for longer hours. The moms and dads could spend more hour working on, their tools or making things to sell in the market, things like that. And then over time, the family made more money and the kids got better education and they went to good universities and the whole village became quite wealthy. That story was not about an actual light bulb, but the light bulb it was used in a very unique way. They used the topic in a very unique way as well. Do you guys understand? The best way to think about your topic, the best way to think about your topic is kind of like salt, right? When you have dinner, if your mom and dad, whoever cooks the food, doesn't put any salt in your food, you will say, Dad, this tastes so bad. But if your dad, puts 5 teaspoons or 5 tablespoons, right, of salt in your sandwich, you won't be able to eat it, right? It'll be too salty. Similarly, guys, very, very big warning. If you don't write about the topic, if you do not write about the topic, right, you will get 0. You will not get any marks in your writing topic. You need to use the topic. But if you write about the topic, if you use the topic as a literal image, you won't get very high marks, right? You have to figure out how I can use the topic as part of my story in a different way instead of writing about the topic, right? It's like if I were to give you a hammer, if I were to give you a hammer like this, I don't know how to draw a hammer. Instead of thinking that every single problem in the world is a nail, you have to treat the hammer like a tool in your toolbox with all the other tools, instead of treating the hammer as the only thing you can use for everything, including cutting hair, right? How would it look like if you're cutting hair with a hammer? Very, very bad, right? So you have to use a topic as a part of your story instead of it being your story. Rule number 2, your story must be feasible. So what does that mean? Feasible means um, is your
Realistic.
is my story likely to happen? Is it possible for my story to happen? So for example, let's just say is it Avanish?
Yes.
Yeah. Imagine Avinash, let's just say he was being, picked on by the year 10s at school. So his dad decides to enroll him in Taekwondo. So Avinash goes and learns Taekwondo, and within 1 year becomes the best Taekwondo, fighter in Australia, goes to the Olympics and wins the gold medal. This story, Avinash, is that very realistic or is that very feasible?
No,
Why is that?
because you can't learn it in 1 year.
Exactly. A lot of you guys write stories which may look like it's realistic, like, hey, I'm not using any magic, Melvin. It's all, based on real stuff. But if I ask you, hey, do you think this is something that could happen? A lot of you say, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. It's not something that actually could happen. The reason your story must be feasible is because if it's not feasible, then your marker won't believe it. And if they won't believe it, it's a bad story, unfortunately, right? Good stories make you think like you're actually there, right? Have you ever read a book or a story where you actually felt like you were in that world, right? So good stories must be feasible. Finally, your story must have a moral. Another way for a moral is a lesson, right? You must teach the audience a lesson from reading your story, right? The reason is good stories teach lessons. Any story you can think of that's really, really good, it has had a lesson or it has had a story. I mean, sorry, it has had something that the audience learns from. Do you guys understand?
Yes.
Habiba, what's your question?
That's me, Mahiba.
Oh, sorry, Mahiba, what's your question?
I have a question. Aren't narratives aren't narrative?
Yeah.
Aren't they not they can be based on real life and they cannot?
It doesn't have to be based on real life. For example, like Harry Potter, like the story about Harry Potter or even Spider-Man, they're not based on real life, but they seem like it could happen. Do you know what I mean? Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, get it.
Awesome. So those are the 3 rules. And then next thing we need to go through is your structure. Now, every few good questions are coming through. So question number, I'll come answer one of this question later. But someone asked me, hey, can my story have a cliffhanger? Cliffhangers is the same as, for example, the way I like to think about a few things. So for example, cliffhangers, cliffhangers, poems, and persuasive. All of this, to me, is like a puffer fish. Do you guys know what a puffer fish is? It's like the fish that's got all the spikes and it puffs up, right? It's one of the most expensive sushi fishes you can have. So they make sushi with this puffer fish. Now, the reason I said all of this is like a puffer fish is because all of this is very, very, very good. very good if done well. So if you do it really well, it's amazing, but very easy to mess up. What I mean by that is the thing about a pufferfish is a pufferfish actually is a poisonous fish. If you eat this fish and if you cook it incorrectly, you will be paralyzed and you will die. So only like a very, very few skilled sushi chefs can cook a pufferfish, right? Similarly, cliffhangers, poems, persuasive writing, all of these things are awesome if you do it really, really well. But most kids mess them up. I had a student last year who got the gate result in like literally last month. He did like so good in the gate exam. Like he did really, really good in every section, right? Like literally, I would say in the top like 2% in each section, right? But for some reason, he decided to write, by the way, Seon, we can see all these things you're doing, right? All right. So for some reason, in the actual GATE exam, he decided to try a poem for the first time. So he was the top 2% in every single subject, but in poetry, he was in the bottom half. Bottom half. But because he was so good in the other subjects, he got into Perth mod. So what I'm trying to say is, yeah, if you can do a really good cliffhanger, if you can do a really good poem, if you can do a really good persuasive, do those things. But it's something you need to work on and become good at. It's not something most kids will be good at, straight away.
Melvin, I've heard that we're not really allowed to do cliffhangers or something in game. Is that true?
You can, like, there's nothing stopping you. It's just that
Well,
something that what we say is that it's just harder to do a good cliffhanger.
all right.
Yeah,
Thanks.
like for example, there's a reason why cliffhangers are so popular in like books and movies and TV shows. It's because it keeps you wanting for more, right? So if you write a really good story with a good cliffhanger, the marker will be like, "Oh, this is awesome. I love it." But but the issue is most people, when they do a cliffhanger, it's not a good cliffhanger. It just ends up being like, it looks like a lazy ending where they just decide to end it really, really quickly. All right, Grenier, last question before I move on.
So Melvin, what is a cliffhanger?
Cliffhanger is like, let's just say, um, like for example, let's just say I write a story about an astronaut who goes to space and then he solves a mission. And then as he's solving a mission, he turns left and there's another spaceship right next to him. That's a cliffhanger because you're wondering, what? Why is there another spaceship? Is that an alien? Do aliens exist? What? That's so crazy, right? So it's a story that ends very abruptly with an very, very interesting at an interesting point, and you're like, oh, I want to know what happens. I want to know what happens. That's a cliff.
Okay.
All right. So narrative structure. This is where I want to quickly go. Narrative structure. Actually, I think I messed up structure there.
Melvin,
Yes, sir.
for when we're doing writing, what do you think like the best type of story? Like, is it the best? What's better to do, like narrative or persuasive?
All right. So this is actually, guys, the very last question. I'm not taking any questions after this. And if you do have any questions, send it in the chat. Now, with both persuasive and narrative, I don't really mind. And the question is, if you ask me, hey, what's better, persuasive and narrative? That's like me asking you, hey, what's better, ice cream or pizza? And the answer is, it depends, right? So for example, if it's a hot day at the beach, I would like ice cream. But if it's like a really cold night, like for dinner, I would like pizza. I don't want ice cream at night on a cold day, right? Similarly, persuasive narrative, it really depends on what you're good at and what the topic is. If you have a very, very good idea for persuasive and the topic fits perfectly for that, do a persuasive. But if you're really, really good at narrative, then do that. Okay, narrative structure.
Thank you.
So most of you, when you guys do your narrative or your stories, your narrative structure kind of looks like this. It's a lot of the beginning, a very small problem, basically no rising action, and then the ending, kind of like that. You guys are expected to write about maybe 1 page max. So 1 page max, right? Actually, sorry, 1 page minimum. Some of you, and then a maximum, I would say, of doing 1.5 pages. That's the maximum. Most of you do 1 page full of the beginning, and then a little bit of the problem, and Krishna, your microphone is on mute. Krishna, is it me? All right. So it goes like that, right? That's how most of your writings look like. What it should look like is like this. You have a quick beginning, a big problem, very big rising action, and then, your ending. So let's label these things and then we'll go from there. So at the beginning, so here you have the beginning, problem, rising action, climax, resolution, falling action. So let me explain what this is. Your story at the very beginning, your story should have a very small beginning. All you need is a maximum of 2 to 3 sentences. Quickly tell me who your character is. Quickly tell me where your story is set. And then you tell me what the problem is. Now, here's a hint. The bigger the problem, the better the story. And then after your first 3 lines where you tell me in the beginning and you tell all these sort of things, your character, things like that, most of your story should be rising action. Most of it should be rising action. And that's where your story gets worse and worse and worse and worse. In good stories, the problem is never stays the same. It just gets harder and harder and harder. And then it reaches a tipping point where the problem is solved, and then the resolution is where the story ends. The falling action is basically where you connect the climax to the ending, right? So for example, you can't quickly go from a final battle to happily ever after, right? You have to have all the things that get solved in between. So for example, I'll use my favorite movie of all time to explain this. So my favorite movie of all time is Frozen. Have you guys seen Frozen?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that actually your favorite movie?
Yes, Queen.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes. Frozen is bad.
No. Terrible.
All right, all right.
Terrible.
No.
I'll start kicking people out who are, interjecting. Okay. So in Frozen, if you were to follow the narrative structure, at the beginning, you're introduced to Anna and Elsa, 2 sisters. They live in Arendelle, and they're all alone. The problem, I think Elsa has magical powers, and she can't control it, and she's all alone. And then she accidentally destroys Arendelle in snow, and she runs away. Right? That's the problem. And then most of the story is rising action, where Elsa has to go into the wilderness to go find her sister, who's going to help her, save it. But then her sister's angry, and then she pushes her out of the ice palace. And now she's stuck with this snowman called Olaf, and she's with this guy called Kristoff. And then they meet was it the trolls that they meet? The rock people?
Yes,
No.
Yeah, I
No.
think
Yes.
They meet those.
No, no.
So
I don't know.
yes.
No, no.
That's at the starting.
Okay, cool. And then all these sort of things happen, And then later they find out that even Hans, the good guy, was actually really, really bad. And then the climax is where they try to attack him, and then Anna turns into ice, right? And then they have a big battle, and then Elsa destroys Hans, gets him stuck, and then Anna is released from the snow. And at the very end, you have the happily ever after, where Anna, is with Kristoff and her sister, and Arendelle is safe and happy. The following action is in between, where they, for example, restore Arendelle, and then they put Hans in jail, all the sort of things. So that is your narrative structure. A very quick beginning, you tell what happened, you tell me what the problem is, and then most of your story was solving the problem. Do you guys understand?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. So that's your narrative
Yes.
structure. And then we will finish off with persuasive structure to end the day. So for persuasive essays, guys, there's 5 paragraphs that you need. You have your introduction, which is your first paragraph. We have 3 body paragraphs. And then you have a conclusion, right? Now, the main thing I want you to learn is about your body paragraphs and how to structure it, right? Persuasive is a lot more straightforward. And then we will have a lot more lessons this term where we break down how to do creativity in persuasive. So that'll be coming up soon. But to get back to here, let me see one sec. Okay. So when you do your persuasive essays, I need you guys to keep practicing this structure. And that structure is called Oreo. So for your paragraphs, you should follow the Oreo rule, which is your opinion. So for example, what you believe. So you would say something like, I believe that energy drinks should be banned because they have too much sugar. Reason? Too much sugar. So for example, you would say, actually, for reason, you would say something like energy drinks have a lot of sugar. If you look at their label cans, they have 60 grams of sugar. Reason, so you back it up. And then you have evidence, and you'd say, many research papers and doctors say that too much sugar leads to heart attack and diabetes and cause an early death. And then finally, your opinion again, where you say, because of the bad effects of sugar, I strongly believe we should ban energy drinks because they have too much sugar. Do you guys understand? So this is basically what you need to follow. So if you guys do a persuasive text, make sure your paragraphs have this sort of format. Your introduction, where you'll tell us what your argument is and the 3 reasons that you have. Then 1 paragraph for each of the reasons, and then a conclusion where you wrap up what you've just said and why you believe it, right? So that's it for the lesson today, everyone. If you do have any more questions, send it in the chat, because I'll only be taking questions from the chat. But if you have no more questions, you guys can head home. So I'll be checking the chat now. If you have any questions, send it there.
Bye, Melvin.
Bye, Melvin. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Melvin. Thank you. Bye, Melvin.
Thank you. Bye, Melvin.
Bye, Melvin.
Bye.
Bye, Melvin.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Melvin. Bye, Melvin. Bye, dear. Hello.
Okay, so send your questions in the chat, guys, because I won't be taking questions from the microphone.
Bye.
So I will read through this. Let's see.
Excuse me.
I'm so sorry, my friend. Send it in the chat. All right. So the first one, it says, can my story be a recount? So it can be a recount, but it must have a good problem. Like, you must have a problem
But
where
yeah.
the worse and worse and worse, and then you're solving it. If your story doesn't have a problem, it is not a story. It's just a recount. And If it's purely just a recount where you're telling what's happening, it's actually a quite bad text. So yeah, make sure you have a good problem. What does FA mean in the planning? You did the beginning and stuff. So FA means falling action. Falling action. What about creative nonfiction and narrative writing? Well, nonfiction is realistic text. So, for example, an example of a nonfiction will be a textbook, an article, things like that. You can write a nonfiction type of text, but it won't be narrative. It won't be a story if you write nonfiction. I mean, unless you're doing like a biography. Um, how do you, my tutor said it starts at 5. Yes, it was starting at 5 last year, but it's this term we start at 4 just because I have something on Sunday afternoons, so I need to leave early. How do you know when you mess up in persuasive? Um, it's really, really hard. The best way to like know that you messed up or you're doing good is whether or not your idea or your argument is unique from everyone else and you have strong reasons for each of your
Appa, it's glitching.
all right. So let's see. Is Gates going to be narrative or persuasive? So it'll be just a general topic and you can write whatever you want based on that. Can persuasive come in Gate? Yeah, it'll just be a random topic and you can use either one of that. Let's see. Can I do my story in first person point of view? Yes, you can. You can do poems. How long do you guys get? You guys get 25 minutes. You guys get 25 minutes. Let's see. All right. So about abstract reasoning or reading comprehension. So we don't go through next week's homework today. We will be going through that next week. So at the moment, we will only be doing what we've already covered, and then we'll be going through homework next week. Can we go back in time? Unfortunately, not Anaska. We haven't discovered a time machine yet, but you can go forward in time. I'm sorry. Was that a serious question? Are you talking about in your story? Can you go back in time?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just being a bit silly. Yes, you can go back in time in your story. As long as it makes sense, okay? All right.
Velvet.
I'm so sorry, Siddharth. You have to send it in the chat.
I've sent it in the chat.
Could you resend it? But I won't be taking it over the microphone.
Okay.
What are the topics we need to study under quantitative reasoning? Pretty much everything in year 5. What is the time limit for abstract reasoning? 35 minutes. Do you prefer us to plan our writing in the actual gate exam or not? Planning is always very good. Just make sure you do it quickly. Anvika, you can get your mom or dad to come pick up a booklet sometime this week because you were on holidays. I cannot help you with your homework, guys. That's only next week. How long does a poem have to be? About 5 lines minimum. Why do you only get 25 minutes? I'm not sure. How long should we plan our story? About 3 to 5 minutes. But yeah. All right, guys. So that's it. I'll